Welcome, everybody. I'm very glad to be back myself, if I do say so. From members present from left to right, Representatives Vance, myself, Chair Grace Tompkins, Representative Eastman, Representative Story, Representative Clayman. Thank you, Sophia and Nate, for facilitating today's meeting, and thanks, Jeff, for being the committee aide, keeping this committee running. A couple of housekeeping and scheduling items before we get going. First, we have DOA Finance Subcommittee today at 4 o'clock. So I think that will be the final installment, if I'm not mistaken. And then, as has been communicated by email, if any of you as members have preferences for confirmation hearings for boards and commissions appointees that have been referred to this committee, please notify my office and in particular Jeff about such desire by March 8th at 5 p.m. And if you request a confirmation hearing, we'll almost certainly do that. And in the absence of requests, I may or may not elect myself to have a confirmation hearing, although if past as any guide, I think generally opt for a more minimalist approach for confirmation hearings. So just sort of doing it as interest and attention dictates. So with those two housekeeping notes set aside, today we have a third hearing for the CS for House Bill 37 from Representative Wool. And we have two amendments that were submitted, and they're both being offered under my name, although I think I'll ask Representative Wool or Mr. Alper to speak to any sort of questions about the content of the amendments as they come forward. Before we get to amendments, Representative Wool, Mr. Alper, any comments that you'd like to make?
For the record, Adam Wool, Representative District 5 in Fairbanks. I don't really have any comments, although thank you for hearing the bill for the third time, and we wanted to add a couple amendments, which we will discuss. And other than that, glad you're back.
Great. Thank you, Representative Wool. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move amendment number 1, which is drafting number B.3.
And I'll object for discussion.
There's an objection. And for, I think, a brief exposition of the amendment, I may turn to Representative Wool or Mr. Alper.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Ken Alper, staff to Representative Wool. The Amendment B3, Amendment number 1, is an effective date change. It's written a little bit more complicated than what might be a standard effective date change because of the way the bill is structured, and I don't know how much you want to hear or the committee wants to hear. The short version of it is that this bill has two basic effective dates because there's the suite of permanent fund management and permanent fund dividend calculation changes that have a more immediate effective date, and then there's the income tax component that was January of the next year. So what's happening in Amendment 1 here is the permanent fund changes as submitted last year would have taken place July 1st, 2021. We're moving it to July 1st, 2022. The tax addition, which was going to start January 1st, 2022, is actually moved forward to January 1st, 2024. And the additional year is partially at the request of the Department of Revenue, with an acknowledgement of the fact that it probably will take a solid year and a half to build the infrastructure to implement a full income tax, and recognition of the fact that we're not quite in the cash emergency that we might have been a year ago, that we have the cushion to be a little bit more diligent in implementing this bill more completely.
Thank you. Questions on amendment number 1B.3? Seeing none, is the objection maintained?
No, I'll withdraw the objection.
Is there further objection? Seeing and hearing none, amendment number 1B.3 is adopted, and that takes us to amendment number 2 submitted by myself, and I will move amendment number 2, which is drafting number B.4.
And I'll object for discussion.
And there's an objection. I also just want to note for the record, Representative Tarr joined us at 3:08 p.m. And again, on amendment number 2, I'll turn to Mr. Alper or Representative Wool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken Alper again. You'll see in this amendment that a few numbers within the bill are being changed in a couple of different locations. What these numbers refer to is as what we speak of as the standard deduction. This is a flat rate income tax bill. It's 2.5% of adjusted gross income minus this fixed number called standard deduction, which is $12,000 currently, $550 for a single filer, $18,800 for a head of household, and $25,100 for a joint filer. That number was tied to last year's IRS number for our 1040 taxes, which is also the standard deduction used to calculate federal income tax. So what's happening in the bill is we're adjusting the numbers to the current federal law, which it updates every year. And then if members would turn to the second page of the amendment, line 18 of the second page adds a section that says we're going to automatically update this number every year. So the state tax, should it pass, would remain linked to the federal tax as far as the quantity of non-taxed income that a taxpayer would get to exclude from their income every year before paying their taxes.
Thank you. Questions on amendment number 2, B.4? Representative Eastman.
Thank you. And I was looking over the legal memo that goes along with this amendment. I'm wondering, have we considered other options for achieving this? I know the legal memo sort of gives you a couple different options. Have we done that?
So through the chair, Representative Eastman, the bill, as Representative Wool introduced it last year, had a fixed dollar standard deduction. It was $10,000 and $20,000. And you may recall, because you were a member of Ways and Means, when the bill was amended in that committee, that we replaced it with this federal tied standard deduction. At the time, it was a conceptual amendment. The technical language to tie it to the changing federal code didn't exist to be able to do it properly. So this, to a certain extent, is a cleanup. The legal memo points out that there's a bit of a delegation issue. The lawyers don't like it when we tie ourselves with a hard connection to the federal code because something weird could happen at the federal code, and then we would be tied to that. Ms. Nauman is online. I believe she'd speak to the fact that there are quite literally dozens of places in Alaska statute where this does take place, and this would be a relatively minor one. But so no, it seems to be the cleanest way to do it would be to simply give Alaskans the same benefit of non-taxable income that is what the federal government uses.
A follow-up?
Follow-up.
And what would the sponsor's position be on, instead of articulating it this way, we were to say, here's our amount, but it will not be less than the amount, currently set forth on the federal side, which would be a way of achieving the same thing, but maybe a little bit less direct of a tie, if you will.
Let me take a first crack, if you don't mind, Representative Wool. The not less than means someone at the state level would need to make a decision every year, through the chair. Representative Eastman. So that means someone at the Department of Revenue would say, this year's standard deduction is going to be X. And then my guess is that Ms. Nauman would agree, you'd get another legal memo that would say that would be an unconstitutional delegation of legislative power to the executive branch. So it might be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Representative Story.
Thank you. Through the chair, basically, I was just wondering the bill sponsor's opinion with the legal memo, and so Eastman just sort of answered his question. And if you wanted to elaborate farther, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, Representative Story. When we initially drafted the bill and put in the dollar amount, I thought that was adequate. However, over time, that amount will change with inflation on the federal level. So I felt it wasn't unwise to link ours to that federal level, especially with regards to income and inflation, and as we've seen a lot of inflation just recently. So I'm not too worried about the legal memo. As was stated by Mr. Alper, there's dozens of Alaskan laws that are linked to federal law, and to say not less than, again, then how much more than? And I don't know that we want to go down there unless we say $1 more than federal, but it's linking it to federal.
Thank you.
I just want to state for the record that Representative Eastman and I have a wager about 100% inflation occurring in the next year or so. So inflation is of great interest to the chair. Representative Clayman.
I would just note with respect to the legal memo that the topic of indexing for inflation and tying certain state statutes to connect to national standards, the memos we get from legislative legal, although they're sometimes specific to the circumstances, I think we've all received different memos on different topics addressing this very same topic. And I mean, I think the answer is they're supposed to give us this warning that if somebody challenges it, it may or may not impact how the courts view. But I think that this is a reasonable approach, and I do think that the case law that they cite, particularly the City of Valdez case, I think. No, it's not the City of Valdez case. Maybe that's later. No, it's anyway, there's a number of different cases involving the taxing power, but none of those have directly talked about using the federal law as providing that guidance. I think it's been more on a local level about finding the constitutional problem. So I generally think that forging ahead, recognize the memo is a reasonable step to take.
Further questions on amendment number 2? Seeing none, I think there was dual objections, Representative Clayman and Representative Eastman. Is either objection maintained, since that would be the net effect here?
I'll withdraw my objection.
And I withdraw my objection.
Are there further objections from any other members of the committee? Seeing and hearing none, amendment number 2B.4 is adopted, and that takes us back to the bill as amended as a whole. Are there any final questions for the sponsor or for Ms. Nauman, who's available online, from members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll go to closing comments. Closing comments on House Bill 37. Representative Tar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to object to moving the bill from the committee today, although I do want it on the record that I don't support this proposal in its entirety, particularly the permanent fund dividend provisions and the amount that would result from that. But I have been trying as hard as I can to move the conversation forward on fiscal plan and long-term stability for the state. So I'm going to not object to moving the bill from the committee so that hopefully more bills will end up in the Finance Committee for consideration.
Thank you, Representative Tar. Any other comments? Representative Eastman.
Thank you. Having looked at the bill, I think it's been a very different approach to our financial problems than I hear when I engage with constituents in my district, for the most part. And I know the argument, at least one of the arguments, was that Alaskans are taxed the lowest of any state as far as lowest overall state and local taxes. And I don't know that that's quite what my constituents are experiencing, whether that is the limitations that we have as a state on resource development, or whether that is the taxes, in effect, that have been made against the dividend these last 6 years. This bill would solve the state's concern at the expense of the people by instituting income tax, by cutting the dividend further in future years, and I don't know that we can solve any of the state's problems if we're not actually at the same time solving the problem that the people are experiencing, because they're why we're here to begin with.
Representative Story.
Yes, thank you through the chair to the sponsor, Rep. Wool. I really appreciate the hard work that you've put into this and your staff. Alaska needs nothing more than certainty about our financial situation and our fiscal plan, and it is costing us investment revenue because we don't have a fiscal plan, and we are losing really talented people and others because we don't come forward and make hard choices. And so I appreciate all this. I appreciate that it would keep the tax level low in the state of Alaska. And I appreciate the discussions that will be going forward, and I am glad to see this. Thank you.
Representative Clayman.
I would, to a large measure, echo much of what Representative Tarr said. I am not going to object to moving the bill, but I guess best to say I'm sort of undecided about whether or not I support the concept. But happy to move the bill.
Oh, I can't be the only one who doesn't say anything.
Vance.
Thank you for the sponsor for being persistent, but I will vote. I will oppose this moving to stay consistent with my word. You've been persistent in what you're doing, and I'm going to be consistent in what I'm doing and honoring the will of my district, but also the Alaskans who have been polled on this issue who said they do not support an income tax, but appear to be more favorable towards a sales tax. And we've heard from others who that doesn't work well, but previously, statewide, an income tax is still not supported. And I'm going to stay consistent with my word, and but do appreciate your efforts into looking at this, because we do come from different parts of the state, and I recognize that. So thank you, Representative Wool.
Thank you, Representative Vance. Great. Well, appreciate all those comments. And with that, we'll entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to report CS for House Bill 37 W&M version 32-LS0275/B as amended out of committee with individual recommendations and the accompanying fiscal notes.
Object.
There's an objection. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Representative Tarr.
Yes?
Representative Story.
Yes.
Representative Clayman.
Yes.
Representative Vance.
No.
Representative Eastman.
No.
Chair Chris Tompkins.
Yes.
4 yeas, 2 nays.
By a vote of 4 yeas and two nays, House Bill 37 moves from committee. Thank you, Representative Wool. Thank you, Mr. Alper. And that's the singular item for today's agenda prior to Finance Subcommittee. We've just noticed, I believe, or it will soon be posted on Basis, next week's schedule, and we'll be hearing a few bills, perhaps bills previously heard. I'm admittedly in a bit of a reactive posture vis-a-vis some legislative matters, so I'm hoping to catch up more in the coming days. So if bills under bills previously heard are noticed, I'll notify the committee as soon as I myself know and alight on those on that information. But we'll hear HJR 29 from Representative Rauscher, SB 71 from Senator Stevens. That's relating to the Alaska State Council on the Arts and license plates and management of art. And then on Thursday, that's both Tuesday and Thursday hearings, and then on Thursday we'll also hear HB 387, which was introduced by myself just earlier this week, which relates to minority caucus membership on Legislative Council and LBNA. So just FYI for everybody. And just a last sort of belated note of housekeeping in terms of masking, given new Ledge Council policy. Masks, I think, are sort of everybody's preference. I'm probably going to continue to wear a mask. But you all should do as you please. I think if there are scenarios where there's perhaps an invited testifier who has an extenuating circumstance, compromised or whatever, or if cases just get really excessive in Juneau, or there's just COVID blasting through the building like nobody's business, we can revisit it, but hopefully we won't ever have to do that. So at 3:25, with plenty of time for Finance Subcommittee, we're adjourned, and we'll see everybody next Tuesday.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. I really do appreciate it. It is great to have you all here. And I'd like to point out that
it was known before this even entered this committee, after it had left the House Ways and Means Committee, that the votes were there to pass this, no matter how atrocious this bill is. It is tax and spend, and then steal as much as they can from the ERA, eliminates the statutory PFD formula, puts full control of all money directly into the hand of Alaska legislators, on top of taxing us all, removing any permanent fund ability to be received by us Alaskans on a whim of may or may not, that is written into the language of this bill. Just like everything else they have going on out there, this is just another tax and spend, a way for them to want to get around and just make us pay for the price of their ever bloated, ever growing government, and it just never ends. And sooner or later, one day, it'll catch up to them, and maybe that day will be sooner rather than later. But these folks down there, it's very obvious. Crest Compton, Matt Clayman, keep going down the list. Adam Wall, Tar there. And it's just amazing what they are so willing to vote away the rights that rightfully belong to Alaskans to receive our rights to our share of the mineral wealth, which is why we have the Permanent Fund Dividend Corporation and the Permanent Fund Dividend that is distributed to all Alaskans. They are knowingly taking away what belongs to us to keep their ever-growing special interests well-funded. Part of the deal that's going on with several of the bills out there, both the Senate and the House, is to use it for education, and they want to give them a $250 million increase in one of those bills above what they're getting right now, which is already $1.3 billion. Population of Alaska's children have dropped by 10% that are school age going to school, 10% less students than what they are actually budgeted for. And currently in the House and in the Senate, they are pushing bills that are to change the student-based allocation. And I was just here just a second ago trying to look them up to give you a reference of them all. I think they're on the docket to be heard tomorrow. And give me just about 2 seconds here to scroll into the correct day. And there we go. Because I believe they're all being heard here tomorrow. In the Senate, it was like SB 10 and a whole bunch of them. They're being heard for the very first time. Oh, keep going, keep going. They had a lot on the docket for today. A lot of corrupt bills. HCR 4 should be an interesting one for you to pay attention to. Urging establishment of outdoor equity. Invited in public testimony. This begins tomorrow at 1 o'clock. They're employing CRT into outdoor activities in Alaska. So critical race theory is now being applied, that they want to apply with HCR 4. There's no other better way to explain that. If you're not a person of color, you're not disadvantaged in enjoying the recreational activities like skiing, hiking, snowmobiling, fishing. You're disparaged against doing that, so that this bill is making claims of, and they want to right that equity disparity between white people and the people of color. All I see this as being is another racist bill. We are all people, no matter what color we are. We all enjoy Alaska's outdoors equally. It has never been any different, and I see this just as another racist bill being pushed by the Democrat Party there. And I believe it's Guarantar who's bringing that one forward, but don't quote me on that. And I don't see it on the docket for tomorrow, so maybe they heard it yesterday. It was 3 different bills that was for basically it changing the way the student-based allocation for students are to be paid. They are going to increase it to, this is their way of getting around their current law that they have, which says that they should be receiving a 10% decrease, which would be about a $130 million budget cut to K through 12 education. They don't want to follow the law, so they're going to change the law to match what they want it to be, to make sure they keep it well funded. This way, if they don't get one pass, maybe they'll get the other. And again, again, because this is an election year, anything that doesn't pass, the Democrats are going to use as a smear job against the governor or against any legislator that doesn't vote for this, as they just don't care about Alaskans. Why are you voting for them? They don't want to admit that don't hesitate that these same Democrats that are doing the smear jobs are also claiming that they are for the people, as they steal every penny out of our bank accounts to keep these specialized programs of theirs well funded off the backs of hardworking Alaskans. Thanks to this pandemic, we were less than 1/3 of Alaskans were on welfare, which is an extremely high, almost double the national average total for number of people on welfare. 1/3 of our population. Thanks to the pandemic, nearly 40% of Alaska is now living off of one form of welfare or another. And our permanent fund dividend, if they were to pay us our statutory PFD, if they were to pay back everything they have stolen from us, they would lift nearly 75% of those 40% of Alaskans living in poverty directly out of poverty. They would be able to have striving goals, be able to purchase their first house, be able to get a reliable vehicle, be able to get well ahead of what has kept them in poverty all this time. And Alaska legislators just don't want you to know that. They want to think that only government can fix this problem. Government spending your money is the only way to fix the problem, not giving the money that belongs to us. They know full well if they gave us that money, we would fix our own poverty problem. We would fix our own equity problems that they keep claiming is out there. But something government has never been able to achieve. Martin Luther King Jr. is definitely rolling over his grave every time he hears these equity and the CRT that is going on in our nation right now. It is just absolutely disgusting. Thank you all for tuning in here today. I got to get back to work. My phone just went off again from another customer saying I can't do this, that I need to get back out there and do my other job. So I am on my way. Please like and share this video. Alaskans need to learn the truth of the bills that they're pushing through. This bill is going to be, as the vote just declared, moved over to the House Finance next. Hopefully the House Finance will allow public testimony right off the bat. And if they do, tell them to stop the theft, get rid of this corrupt bill. If they want something Alaskans can get behind, then they need to drag out SJR 6, the one that's been worked through in the Senate, that has been sitting in Senate Finance since last year. During the regular special session, that they refused to bring to the table and even discuss once, not even once during all of the 4 special sessions. And it's the only bill that Alaskans were willing to get behind. And since neither the Senate nor the House is willing to bring those kind of bills forward, they should be an outright no on any other kind of bill that they are bringing. Nothing they are showing so far will protect our rights within the Constitution. Everything gives them the right to say may or may not and change the laws willy-nilly, as the current legislators feel like doing, as they have done for the last 7 years. And these new bills they're writing also strips out all past statutory PFD formulas and completely gets rid of them, so this argument would be gone. That is also one of their intents behind these kind of bills, is they want to get rid of the conflict of them breaking the law. They know they openly break the law every time they vote yes for the budget and the CBR vote every year. They want to not be called lawbreakers. They want to be called lawmakers, but they consistently, 7 years in a row, break the law every time they vote yes for the budget or the CBR vote. Again, like, share this post. Go to my website, politidic.com. Click that support button. All proceeds goes right back into being able to restream these things. Right now, you can catch this live here on Politidic Unfiltered on Facebook. And you can also find us on YouTube at Politidic and on Twitter at Politidic. Anytime we go live, we're trying to make sure we get it to all platforms. And with your proceeds, we're hoping to be able to, your support, be able to afford to start streaming directly to Rumble. Sadly, though, Rumble requires a paid-for account to be able to do this kind of stuff on their platform. And so I need your proceeds to be able to do that. With your help, we can. Right now, I've been able to do the restream thanks to all of your support, to where we are broadcasting to all these channels at one time, and keeps our website running, keeps the telephone turned on, and makes sure the coffee pot is full. Will also help us be able to make more assembly meetings, school board meetings, and everything else that is of concern here within our state. If you have something you would like me to live stream, do not hesitate to contact me through Messenger on Facebook or on the WhatsApp, and or give me a call or a text message with the phone number listed on the page here at Facebook, and let me know what you think or where you would like me to be. Again, any support that you can send my direction to help me get there and pay for the gas is greatly appreciated. I appreciate everybody that has donated here and shown their support over the years, and especially during these last couple of months. You made sure it went back over the red mark again for the services that I'm currently paying for, and put us just slightly back into the green. I am working up, like I said, to try to save up enough money to be able to start to do Rumble, also live streaming all of this to all of you. Thank you all, and have yourself a great afternoon. And I believe I will be back again one more time tomorrow for another PFD bill. Do not quote me on that. I'll have to check and see what my calendar says.